Hey guys, it's your boy Tristan. Welcome back to another GameMaker video. So in this video what I want to do is I want to fix up one of the bugs relating to running and crouching that somebody mentioned to me in the comments. Just the second thing was a user by the name of SpaceJ wants to know if we can do head bobbing, like the nice effect that you get when you're running in a game and the camera moves around. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually just going to look at this bug. So the problem was that holding in shift doesn't let you sprint. It changes the field of view, but it doesn't actually change the speed. Now there's another one that I also noticed myself, that when you're crouching and you're not able to stand up, so you let go of control and you don't stand up because you can't, but after you've let go of control you can move at full speed. So that's something that we also don't want that I might fix. So to fix the running glitch, we're going to go into the step event. What I want to do really quickly is I want to add a couple instance variables that'll make the code a lot easier to read. So the first one is going to be, it's going to be called moving, and it's just going to signify whether or not we're actually moving. So it's going to be pretty simple. So it's just if our forwards and backwards velocity is not 0 or our right and left velocity is not 0. So if one of them is non-zero, then we're moving. So that's going to be useful for later. And just this second variable here is called can stand, and it's just a boolean that returns whether or not there is sufficient space above us if we were to stand up to go to the normal walk height. Those two variables will help us later on. So if we come down here to the running and crouching section, really quick, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace this with can stand, because that's exactly what can stand is. So that's just a bit nicer to read. So the problem that we experienced where we can't run comes from the fact that here in this else clause of the crouching section, we have if keyboard check VK control. So if we're holding control, then we crouch. But otherwise, if we're not holding it, it'll check if we can stand. And if we can, it'll set max speed to walk max speed. Now, the problem is if we're holding shift to run, obviously we're not holding control. So this else clause is going to get triggered and it's going to check if we can stand, which we can, and then it's just resetting our speed back to walk max speed. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to cut this from the control section as well. And then I'm going to add this extra check in here, separate from the shift and control section. So go back to walking speed if not pressing shift or control, and that's exactly what it does. So that'll fix the issue. Sure enough, if we come in and we try to sprint, it does change our speed properly, and we can also still crouch, but we're still having this issue. So let's take a look at that. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to type in can stand and check if we are not pressing shift or control. So, and sure enough, now I'm not pressing control and we're moving at the right speed when we're under there. And so the reason that we needed to add this extra condition in is because if we couldn't stand, so if I'm not holding control and I can't stand and I'm not holding shift, then the way that I had it before would have said just go at walk max speed, which is not what we want to do. So just make sure you have can stand here and not holding control and shift, and that'll fix that. Okay, so moving on to the main topic for today, we're going to do head bobbing. So ultimately what I want is I want the camera to project at a changing Z coordinate. So here we had this variable from I think episode 3 that we set up called CZ, and that's just the camera's Z coordinate. And at the moment it's just the player's Z coordinate plus the player's height. If I also had something like this, then as long as this bobbing is periodically going between some value and 0 every time that the player's moving, that'll give our desired effect. So the way that I want to do this is I want to use a sine wave. So if you remember from trigonometry, a sine wave is just a periodic function that goes between two values. Now, the function that I've typed here is y equals 4 times sine of x. Now, this 4 controls the amplitude of the sine wave. So this coefficient out the front is telling the sine wave to go between -4 and 4. Now, another thing about sine waves is you can change their period. So at the moment, just the standard y equals sine of x function has a period of 2 pi or 6.2-ish. But say if I went y equals 4 sine of x, x divided by 2, then that'll actually increase the period. So it'll take longer to do a full cycle. So here the period is about 12. So I think it's 4 pi now. Alright, with that said, we're going to need a way to generate a sine wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into the player's create event, and I'm going to make a variable called bob tick, and I'm just going to initialize that to 0. I'm going to hop on over to the step event. I'm going to drag a new code action, and here all I'm going to do is I'm going to say bob tick plus equals 0.05. Now that I have a counter that serves as the sort of x coordinate in the graph, I can do something like this. So I can say maybe bob equals 4 times sine of bob tick, for example, and that'll sort of get us the graph that we were looking at before. And of course I haven't said what bob is yet, so I'm just going to initialize that in the create event. Alright, so I've just initialized bob to 0 there. So what I can do now is I can actually just come into the camera's draw event. So cz equals object play.z plus object play.height. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add one more, object player.bob. And what that does is that that gives us this sort of effect where it's sort of just going up and down. Now obviously there's a lot of work to be done here, because for starters we don't want it to happen when we're not moving. So what I'm going to do actually really quickly. So what I've decided is I don't want the head to bob when we're jumping either. So I've just said if we're grounded and we're moving, I've just put that stuff in the if statement there. So now the camera will only bob when we're moving. Now what if we want him to bob a little bit faster, depending on how fast he's going? So what I could do here is I could just come in and say bob tick plus equals 0.05, and then I'll just multiply that by max speed. So that way he'll bob faster when we're running, as opposed to walking, as opposed to crouching. And so now you're basically done, if you want to leave it at that. Of course, we could make it a lot better. We could make it bob and sway to the side. And I might just show you how to do that real quick. So if we want to add a bit of swaying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple more variables in the create event of the object player. So I'm going to say sway x equals 0 and sway y equals 0. And so the idea behind this is they're also going to act on the sine wave. So it's going to be mostly the same thing. So I'm going to say sway x equals 4 times. So this time I'm going to say cosine of bob tick. And the reason for that is because I'm going to set sway y equal to 4 times sine of bob tick. And so x and y have to be different. So if sway x and sway y were both sine or both cosine, it just wouldn't look quite right. Yeah, that's probably the most I'm going to say about that. So the main thing to note really is that cosine is really just a sine wave, but it's translated to the left by pi over 2 units. And so we probably don't want him to sway as fast as he bobs. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase the period. So if you remember, to increase the period of a sine wave or a cosine wave, you just divide the thing in brackets by some number, and that'll increase the period. And of course, we're going to have to come back into the camera, the draw event of the camera. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the camera's x coordinate. So we're just going to tack on the sway x, and to the camera's y coordinate, we're just going to tack on object player sway y. So if we take a look now, and sure enough, now we have swaying as well as head bobbing. So I'll admit, like it is quite exaggerated, but you can play with the values to your heart's content and sort of see what you think feels right. But the main thing to sort of notice there, to take note of, is in order to change the values to sort of know what you're doing, like know what values to change, you're going to have to understand how the sine and the cosine functions work. So that's sort of what I talked about at the start there. Now maybe just like one more thing. So notice when we're going under here, since the camera's going up and down, it's sort of clipping in and out of the structure. So to fix that, it's pretty easy. We'll just go back into the player's step event. And where it says bob, where we're setting the bob variable, we're just going to surround that with a if statement that says can stand. And I might even just do that in one line. So if can stand, then so if we can stand up, then we'll do the bobbing, but otherwise we won't. So that'll be good. And sure enough, when we're under here now, it doesn't bob up and down. It still sort of sways, which yeah, I think is quite highly exaggerated, but I think I'll leave that up to you to change the values how you like them. Alright, so anyway, that's been the changes to the running and the crouching and the addition of the head bob and the head sway. I hope you liked it. Yeah, I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next part.